All right, so we're out here with Jer, and we're going to be talking about where your feet should be. This is important because it really determines your body position, allows you to throw farther without really compromising much else in your form. So I'm going to have Jer come over here, and we're going to start with an open stance. As you can see, he's got his front feet facing forward, and he's not staggered at all. So we're going to have Jer throw as far as he possibly can, keeping all his other pieces of the form correct. Good nose angle, good leading with the elbow, good hips as much as he can, and we'll see what happens.
Let's try this.
Now, as you can see, Jer's a monster, puts a good line on that disc. But now we're going to place his feet correctly and see what kind of change that brings. Boom. Almost to the tree line.
Quite a bit further.
Yep. So let's go get some distances on those and we'll talk some more about it. I hear oftentimes when I do clinics for folks, I'm ceilinged out at 310, 315, 330, and I really want to get to 400. And we go do a clinic, and what I see is their feet are open. And it may not be as extreme as this, but almost every time I can count on there being maybe this at best. Mm-hmm. And so with you fixing nothing but your feet, your form being really good beyond that, both throws were good.
Yeah.
But there was a clear difference in power when it comes to your feet simply being placed correctly.
Yep. It allowed the rest of my body to create more power. The more open my stance was, there's no brace for me to get into, and it allows more for a grip lock possibility. I threw that pretty well, even on a bad stance, but I felt like I was going to grip lock it the whole time.
Absolutely, and that's partially because you're aware that letting go later is better.
Yeah.
And so when you go out and you do this for the first time and you finally fix your feet, your bad throw is likely going to be early and left. So you'll have to get used to holding on to that disc longer and letting go later. And that'll end up being your hit point, almost like the end of the crack of a whip. So that's going to be what allows you to get that additional power without much effort.
Thanks for joining us so far. If you're liking this, please like and subscribe and tag a friend in the comments. We're trying to get everybody better at disc golf today. Join us in the podcast room.
All right, so here we are back in the podcast room, a few beers later, a couple days later, but we're here to bring you more content about foot placement in kind of a more in-depth way. And so we have this side-by-side, and this is going to be a side-by-side of Jer throwing with an open stance and with a closed stance. We had him do this with a couple run-up throws rather than standstills to kind of show some other points as well. So let's start here. And as you can see, we paused it in a spot where he's planting his foot. One arrow is pointing kind of out towards the fairway, more straight, where the other is more perpendicular to his target. How did that feel as far as the difference between those two spots?
Knowing that I was throwing with my foot open, I felt like I had to make everything else about my throw just as perfect, so I had to overcompensate and do quite a bit of a drag with everything in my form. As you can see just from this shot here, my shoulders are way out front, my arm is dragging quite a bit, my hips look like they're okay, but they're open, way more open than I want them to be at this part of my throw. But that's just, at this point, that's kind of what I'm seeing from this side by side here.
Yeah, and that takes away a lot of power because you don't get the opportunity to engage your hips as much. As you can see, if we go back a little bit and look at his run up, if we stop it here, his feet come together, but he's not doing a traditional X step because the X step is important partially because it does get your feet into that placement of where you want your feet to be, which will be a future video to watch later where we get more in depth on that. But as you can see, when he gets to this point, where again we're back at where the arrows are, his hips are going to be in a similar spot, but that's only because he's trying to throw well in each form, just one is an open foot placement and the other is a closed.
Yep, and I want to kind of go through the finish and the follow through here. On the weaker one, I kind of have to I'm so worried about the throwing it kind of forward, having the right grip, everything else but my foot placement, that my back end feels very weak. I normally have a pretty strong foot drag or a follow through with my backside. This feels like it's kind of weak, and I know I'm not getting all of my power into it as well.
Would you say partially it's because you're not getting the rotation? Because your foot being already open,
yeah,
not let you really swing around as much as you have to step through.
Correct. It's kind of, I think I was talking about it earlier in the video. It's just not creating that brace that I need to create more of a powerful throw.
Right.
As you can see, the follow through of the flight kind of it turned over quite a bit as well. It seemed like I threw it nice and flat and straight, but normally that disc is quite stable, but I got it over on Anheuser a little easier because of the grip lock I created by having an open stance.
Yeah, one thing that's touchy with an open stance is exactly that, is you have more of an opportunity to miss left and right. Whereas with a closed stance, I feel that missing to the right is a bit harder to do because you really have to grip lock it outside of the normal amount. It just gives you a better margin of error for more consistent shots. Not to take away from open stance throws, I'm actually kind of a fan of them myself. I know for myself, if I have a low ceiling, I don't like to throw mid-ranges, but I like throwing powered down fairway drivers. And part of my technique is throwing with an open stance.
Okay.
So I think it can be a useful tool, and it's not something to get rid of. For example, if that's kind of been your issue and that's how you throw, I always tell folks, don't get rid of that shot if it's good. If you're parking stuff inside of 300 feet with your current throw, keep that club in the bag. But if you close your stance up, you're going to open yourself up to more distance and use that on appropriate tee shots that are 400 feet, and you need that extra distance. But you can certainly have both throws in play if you practice them enough.
So let's watch these through just one more time, just to see how they are working together. Still not terrible throws overall with the open stance, but the distance, not as much, not even close really, about 40, 50 feet on every throw that I threw out here today. Having that nice front foot brace creates quite a bit more power.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it was one of the first things we talked about, is it's a simple thing you can do to immediately increase power and consistency, is just proper foot placement. We might talk about footwork a little bit later. That'll be in a future video.
If you enjoyed this video and you liked how these discs flew in this video, we're giving away this Glow FD with our friend Pirate Nate, his stamp on the disc. Great flyer. It's one in my bag already as well. So give it a like and say yes please in the comments, and one of you guys will be winning this disc.